Dear Lisa, hey Malfred, nice to hear from you. Dear Lisa, can you elaborate on the difference between self-improvement and self-recognition? Can you give a smashing tip on how to discern between trying to find happiness and peace in time and daily necessarily organization of your practical existence? I often do not know what I do to make a better day. I often do not know when what I do to make a better day is seeking for peace in the wrong places, and when it is something worldly that has to be done. Confused. It was really fine what you were saying. Most people I know would agree, but as you know, I work with it every day. Yeah. Malfred works with people that are ill and dying. So, yeah. Oh, that's nice that you feel that it's okay that I say that in society. Feels quite a little vulnerable saying it out loud in our political climate. But I want to challenge that, because that is a limiting belief of Lisa's character. So to your first question, Malfred, can you elaborate on the difference between self-improvement and self-recognition? Yeah, so self-improvement is endless. So I still improve myself, and I'm refining the details of Lisa's personality. And I like to have the idea that will go on endlessly, that I can endlessly improve myself with different situations coming up and different scenarios coming up, and different life experiences. Which is kind of the same as those other two words, but so the self-realization is a presence that's right here. It's the consciousness, it's this movement of consciousness. So when you're identified, it's like the person and the consciousness belong together, and they tumble through time together. So it feels like there's somebody tumbling through time. And when the waking up happens, is the consciousness separates from the person. And then the consciousness is just here. So your looking is just here. It's no longer getting lost with the person in time. But the timeline of the person still carries on. So when we're waking up, often what's happening is it's separating and coming back together. And then at some point it detaches, but maybe there is like this that happens where the consciousness is more present and the person is more present. But it's like it's like this razor sharp knife slitting through reality that knows what it is, that doesn't forget, but not intellectually. It's just here. Consciousness is here. Consciousness is present. But then when it separates, it doesn't mean that when it separates, the person suddenly then becomes perfect. The person is, to me, it's the character or the person, whatever you want to call it, is the genes and the conditions of the body. And the past lives, which you might say is genes, dependent on how you believe that. So those are the three things. So it's the conditions, the social conditions that it's been brought up. So the conditioning, the genetics, and the past lives. And all of those are most probably evolving and changing. And there could be more elements to it, but these are maybe the main elements. And that belongs to the body. So that belongs to like the movement of the hand, or the way that you speak, or the way that you think, or the way that you behave. And when the consciousness and the person separate, it doesn't mean that the person suddenly becomes free of all its conditions and all its genetics and its ways of being. There can be an improvement of it. So when it separates and the seeking is reduced or stops, or the seeking is predominantly gone, there can be a change in that person. So a lightening up, I would assume, like for me, I lightened up. Like, so I felt like it became more hollow. So things that were important to me before and maybe had that seeking energy, they're still there, but they become hollow. They have less inside them, like less juice. And recognizing these things, the human things, I think makes most probably your life easier and your relationships easier and your interactions with the world easier. So the more that you become conscious of dynamics, the more that your life gets easier. So say if you've got a freezing mentality, so when something shocking happens to you, you freeze, the more you can become conscious of that, the more that you can begin to change it. So say if your boss is aggressive with you, the more that you can become a conscious, okay, I'm freezing here, then maybe there can be different ways in which you interact with your boss. You can learn different techniques to interact. So fixing the person and improving the person doesn't separate the person from consciousness. So if you just worked on the self, it's not what separates from consciousness. I don't actually know what it is that makes that separate. It's something that happens. There seems to be a pattern in people of like listening to this subject and get involved in non-duality and being around other people in this subject. So that seems to be a pattern. But I watch people that are really unconscious of their dynamics, and then some that are really conscious, and they have these energetic shifts. So I don't know what it is. It's most probably something to do with an internal surrender. So it's most probably when the person, this sounds really awful, when the person is out of options, like it's got nowhere else to go, there is some form of letting go. And that can be a positive or negative thing. So I know people that have got everything they ever wanted, and then there was some sort of collapse. And then some people where everything's gone wrong, and then there's some sort of collapse. So it's some form of surrender. And we don't know how that happens, but it's definitely a letting go that happens. And sometimes that what can happen prior to letting go is becoming the character becoming less big, so the character having less suffering. So if prior to awakening they had like a lot of suffering and a lot of uncomfortableness, there can often be a sorting out of that. Like, so the person becomes less big. But again, that's not indicative of what needs to happen. So, and the reason I say it becomes less big is because, like, so if I imagine like a family member, like a cousin or something, that's really involved in their life, like going up to them and speaking to them about non-duality, and them not only hearing it intellectually, but also the vibration of it, because non-duality is like a vibration in a way. That, you know, when they're really involved in their life and believe everything's real, then there's less likely that they'll hear it. When a person is more calm and more still, then there's more likelihood of hearing it. So you could then imagine your family members, like imagine someone that's really suffering and really involved in their story. If you tried to speak to them about non-duality, or if they saw an enlightened person, it would just do zilch to them, or what we consider an enlightened person or an energetically free person. It would do zilch to them, whereas to someone else it would, that's more open, they would have an effect. So there does also seem to be that factor, but it's not always the way it is. You know, I've met people that are deeply in hell, you know, like in mental institutes or in deep hell and agony, and then there's waking up, like Byron Katie and Eckhart Tolle are examples of this. What does seem to be true in all stories, there's this surrender that happens. But basically, I think that nobody really knows. I think, to me, the best approach to non-duality after 10 years of doing this, and I love radical non-duality, like just keep repeating like who you are and what you are, like, and this is really beautiful. But I feel the best approach is that when you feel like a doer and when you feel like you're suffering, address the suffering. So address what's going on inside of you, work out what you're suffering about, and become very present to the feeling of it. So say if you've had an argument with your sister, you work out what happened. So the sister made you feel very vulnerable and very alone. So you work out the story, where it's connected to in childhood, you know, all the normal things that we do. And then you just become very present to, say, the pain in the heart of vulnerability. And then you can do other healing techniques for it, but that's the basic recommendation. So it's like you, on the human level, you suffer, you have an argument, a pain comes up, and then you pay attention to that pain, you work out why it's happening, and then become very present to it. But you have to work out where it's happening in your body. Like all discomfort, even though it might feel like it's just in your head, the discomfort, it's always in the body. And you become present to that in the body and not running away from it. And then you can also go a bit further with that, and you can then work out what it is that that feeling wants. So once you've sat with the pain of it for a while, like not rejecting the pain, then what is it that that feeling wants? So that vulnerability wants love. That vulnerability wants comfort. And then you can imagine giving that feeling that. So you can imagine giving what it feels like it lacks. This is very healing, this, I think. So that's what you do on the human level when there's lots of suffering. And then when there's less suffering, like repetitively listening to this subject, or you could move your attention back to consciousness, to what's happening. But knowing that any idea that that will lead you to enlightenment is simply an idea. I think these are good, wise techniques to use, these two techniques. They're not from me, they've got my own flavor from them, but it's what I learned when I was into non-duality, and it comes from many teachers prior. And even though it has doership, you have to do it knowing that that's not you doing. That's something that's happening. There's a learning of that, and then that process begins to happen in the body, but it's not you're doing it. So it's coming conscious and putting your attention in the feelings, and then when you're not suffering, moving your attention back to what's actually happening. But that's not going to lead you to enlightenment, because that's a story. So then not getting involved in all these stories that go with it. That's just something you begin to do because you listen to these subjects, because you listen to people talk about it, and then it's in God's hands. You don't know what's going to happen. It's in life's hands. And listening to this subject again and again, and listening to multiple people. Don't just listen to me, listen to other people that resonate, because there might be some things, you know, that I'm not the perfect teacher, nobody is. There might be some things that I don't focus in enough on, like there's Roger Castillo that talks a lot about doership, which is really important. There's Neo-Advaita that talks a lot about no self, which is really important. But then I also think getting stuck in any of them, so getting stuck in the way I think or the way another teacher speaks, is also not it. Like, it's not about leaving with ideas. The most important part when you're listening to a speaker, I think, is the energetic vibration. But the words also have an impact, because they're also energetic vibrations as well. And they also take out odd thoughts. So you have all these thoughts, and then it takes out all these odd thoughts. So that's my perspective. And then I think there's lots of different things that you can do that's healthy for the person, like holotropic breathing, therapy if you've had very difficult childhood. But none of these things, I think, are the end game. These are things that are helping body, mind. What else is there? Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, massage, kinesiology, Reiki. Oh, there's so many, I can't remember it all. And I always think, don't take anyone too seriously, even myself, because these are words and ideas. I don't believe anything I say. Just appreciate it and let it undo ideas if there's ideas there, but don't take it on as a new dogma or a new belief system. The most important thing of what's happening is the vibration in this talk and in other people's talks. That's the same as the vibration that you get from when you watch news and when you watch the L stuff and all that anxiety is transported. L is such a nice letter. I do like L. Not just because my name's Lisa. Lisa, the sound of all those words. I actually think I prefer Elizabeth or Lizzie or something. Lisa comes from that. But it fits in perfectly with my Gemini personality. I think Lisa is something like communication of God or something, and Gemini is all about communication as well. It's funny, isn't it? My parents thought they picked my name. Apparently my dad fancied a TV person that was called Lisa, and that's how he ended up with it. And because my mum had named my brother, he got to name me or something. And then they wanted it to be Liza, but they misspelt it. I also always wanted to have a name that was gender neutral. I quite liked Robin, as it could be a boy or a girl. Okay, the rest of your questions. I am really talky tonight. I often do not know when what I do to make a better day is seeking for peace in the wrong places, and when it's something worldly that has to be done, confused. Yeah, it's from your energy. Like, so you know it from your energy. It's okay doing worldly things, but is it coming from anxiety energy, or is it coming from an open energy? And I get it wrong sometimes, you know, sometimes I do things from a closed energy and like an energy of agitation or something. I don't like doing paperwork. Being a severe dyslexic with other brain issues, there's something weird about my brain. I really don't like doing paperwork, and I always live in countries that weren't the country I was born in, and often don't speak the same language, and I get that. Yeah, thanks Marfred for your question. I really appreciate it. So if you'd like to call, just write call me. Oh yeah, and there's somebody else I would like to advertise. There is another channel called Lisa Cairns video clips. I always forget to advertise it. I want to, but I forget. But in the box below, it's advertised. There is another gentleman. It's not to do with me, and he does these clips. Sorry. He does these short clips of my talk. So often I get comments about like, I would like your channel if you edited it, or if you did this, or if you did that. And I like to keep my channel just the pure streams and not edit it out. I think that's nice to do that. But also that's like another option, is if you want an edited video, then you can go to his channel, and he also titles it also. You can look up particular subjects. So it's Lisa Cairns video clips. And he also has other spiritual channels, I think, and you can maybe find that on his YouTube page.